So in working on our illustration, we left off with color holds. Ideas of how to replace the black line art with a different color, or, as I'm showing you here, with a gradient. Now I'm making really bold decisions here. But because they are layer styles, they can always be turned off. So let's see how that looks on white. On white, that looks pretty good. How does it look on gray? Looks okay. How does it look on black? Looks beautiful on black, right? But a big problem with replacing all of your black line art is you'll lose the contrast that black is giving. So what I recommend is you push your color hold too far to experiment with it, and then maybe you walk it back a little bit. And you can do that with opacity. But often that will just kind of wash it out. So a fun way to do this and to add texture to your line art, which is something I enjoy, is you can set that color hold replacement line art to dissolve and then take the opacity down a little bit so that it breaks it up like that. And then you get both the color accents and the contrast. Now, what if you like the color hold in some places but not in others? What you can do, because this is a copy of your vector line art, this goes on top of your line art, you can actually rasterize the layer style, which rasterizes not only the vector of the line art, but also rasterizes, in this particular case, all of these individual pixels. Why is that helpful? Well, just like doing a mixed duotone, I can decide I don't want that so much right here. Right? I don't want that so much right here, or here, or here. And I might decide I might not want it much of any place. But I might like it at some of the edges. Like I might like it on the top of the feet, but not on the bottom of the feet. So we have lots and lots of control, even to how our line art looks. All right, so there we have a color hold on the line art. You see that? And it helps it pop in certain areas. I'm just going to take it down at a lower opacity. This is a little bright red, so I'm just going to knock this down a little bit. But it gives it a certain glow, a certain power. That's nice. Okay, now, what's another type of color hold? I need to go through this quickly and finish this up. It's to have that little star highlight, right? This kind of thing, just floating above your black line art. So what's shiny? Well, the helmet would be shiny, right? The sword would be shiny. How would I do that? I just make a new layer on top of my black line art. I'm just going to draw in a little star shape, much like the Wonder Woman bracelet glint, something like that. Then I'm going to fill it with white. This is on a new layer on top of the black line art, filled with 100% white. Why did that look weird? I don't know. Okay, draw a star shape, fill it, edit, fill, 100% white. Right. Because it's on its own layer, you can warp it, you can distort it, you can figure out where you think it looks like it's probably most effective right there. And then, because it's on its own layer and it's a color hold, I suggest you play with layer styles on it. So one that's really helpful to soften it a little bit is outer glow. And you can play with the amount of noise. You know I like noise. With the size of it. with the opacity of it, right? With the spread. Ooh. Like, how is that glint really working? I try to advise, don't do these glints, these little star highlights, don't do them as any color other than white. But then you can take their opacity down and kind of dim them if you need to. And because they're rasterized with that glow around them, I can then take my eraser and kind of trim their edges, right? So they feel softer and more believable as well. And because it's rasterized, I can warp it, and I can really just get it perfectly, believably in line with my illustration. And then I can duplicate it, and I can use it somewhere else in the illustration. So where else would I have a glint? Maybe on the helmet, right? And I actually like it a little bit better on the helmet than on the sword. But I can erase away a little bit from it, and you can, spend some time. These are special effects, massaging these things. Maybe another duplicate and put it on the eye. Who doesn't like a really bright highlight in the eye? So those are all color holds because they're affecting the black line art underneath. Make this one a little bit smaller. And duplicate it. Yeah, I don't need multiples. All right. And of course, you can play with the blending mode as well, like soft light. So you see how now that's in the eye, but it's not as extreme, right? Especially if I rasterize the layer style. Or pin light. Or even overlay. So if you like what it's doing, but you're not sure how strong it is, you can set it to rasterize the layer style, and then set it to overlay, and it will only affect the pixels underneath, like that. So rasterize the layer style. These are special effects like olives on top of the sandwich. And then overlay. Right, just gives a little extra to it. And then you might decide, you know what, I missed that really strong version in the eye, so I'm going to change it back to pin light or to soft light. So this is like a McDonald's menu, where when you're building a sandwich, you get to click if you want onions, click if you want tomatoes, click. You're doing that with your layers in building your sandwich here, your digital coloring sandwich. How far do you want it to go? And you can do it with layer styles, or you can do it with just individual layers with different blending modes. And if you find something that works for you, you might use it in multiple places to get that shiny look on all the metal. Right? This is an overlay with that star. Yeah. So I've got a lot of color holds here. Probably don't need all of them. There we go. And they all play their part. And you can see how those are affecting over the top of the line art. So if I auto-select the layer, because I've rasterized these, I can also soften them with my eraser. All right, lastly, the final thing we're going to learn with this project, option we have, is what's called an offset. So an offset is when you add some sort of border around your image so that it shows up better on darker backgrounds. And you could reverse it too. So let's check how it looks on black. Let me just take all of these effects, these color holds that are on top of my line art, and I'm going to put them into a group and call that group color holds. So they can all just be turned off or on as I like. And then if I wanted to go in there and work with the individual ones, I could. I've got the line replacement, and then I've got a lot of these little stars just everywhere. This one's a little too strong. There we go. All right, so now what do I do? Well, if I go to my line art and I want it to show up even more strongly on its outline, I can go to my black bread layer, this one, and add a layer style. I have to unlock it to do it. I can also do it on duplicate. And I can just do a stroke, and I can make that stroke a color, or I can make it bright white, right? And now it definitely shows up. But the problem is, because this isn't a logo, this is line art, it's going to stroke on the inside of my coloring too. And that's not that helpful, right? So what can I do? Well, one thing, I can make a duplicate, turn off the effect, and lock it on the top, and then take this one and move it down underneath my coloring layers, but on top of my backgrounds, right? And now I just have that stroke on the outside. But lo and behold, what happens? There's like a little blip in that stroke because of one pixel that was out of place on my line art. So what can I do now? I can right-click and rasterize this layer style, just like I did for my color holds, and then trim it. Because those kind of things will happen more often than you think. And now you see I have an offset around it that helps it show up. And the idea is that it should also help it on different colors. Think of it like the white border that's around sticker designs. Right? Now, if I want that to be thicker, I just double click and I just thicken the stroke. So I add a stroke to the stroke. Right? Now, what if I don't want it to be a hard-edged offset? I can also do outer glow, and I can soften it. I can do outer glow with a stroke, outer glow without a stroke. I can play with the size. But this is a good idea for your spot illustration. It will make it more versatile when we put it onto different backgrounds. And again, they are layer styles, so you can just turn them on and off as you see